At this point, if you try and get a pack, even after the line opens, you still have a good shot. Like I had to refresh everything to get in there, and I'm 142, and there's 140,000 left still. Like,
yeah, I got in late from getting it.
Yeah, if that was 2 months ago, or even a month ago, I'd be like
500,000.
Yeah. Now I just have to try not to forget when it's my turn.
That's what I was saying. I'm still not going to get one.
Oh, that's what you meant?
You got to set alarms and shit on your phone. Just like shout out Siri, 45 minutes later, just check it, do it again.
And my email will alert me, but it's like I get the alert an hour after.
Yeah. Jordan's looking like he really wants us to start the show. But
I'm waiting for the countdown. I'm going to talk for the countdown. What am I supposed to do? Sit here and watch his hand?
I didn't even get a visual yesterday. He just had to shout it out to me. It was terrible.
Same with me. What is going on, everybody? Jordan, I got to fix this. Sorry, pal. Making you work here. What's going on, everybody? Welcome
Finally.
.com NBA Deeper Dive presented by Jock Market. I'm Dave Loughran at Lafay_D on Twitter, LOUGHY_D. Along with me, boy, we got a 3-man booth for the first time since week 17 of the NFL season, where we would do the Monday morning quarterback show. Hell of a lot of fun. Hopefully you join us when that starts back up. By Adam Scherer at ShipMyMoney DFS and Josh Engelman at Josh Engelman. Josh, first time on the Deeper Dive, all season maybe for you?
Yeah, I mean, perfect time for a 3-way as far as I'm concerned.
You know, I guess so. Adam, good time for a 3-way?
Not with Josh. Or
wait, but you're saying that shaved face is doing things for you?
I was about to throw in not with a baby face either.
Oh man. Anyway, we got I guess we have a lot to talk about. Not really. We've got one game, a showdown slate. We're going till 6 p.m. We're switching it up, throwing you a little bit of a curveball today in that the MLB Live Before Lock show is coming up right after this. So stick around. I know a lot of you are playing both sports. If you're not into MLB yet and you want to check it out, you're like, all right, I'm all about this showdown stuff, but it doesn't lock till 8 o'clock. And I got an hour to kill in between that. Check out the Live Before Lock show. Jump into MLB. We've got some great hosts, analysts, and some amazing tools over on the site, which if you haven't done so yet, you should really use the promo code Gold Rush. Today's the last day to get 25% off the entire month for baseball, basketball, golf, UFC, NASCAR, you name it. All of the tools, ownership, player projections, top stack tool, boom bust tool, top pitchers tool, everything, including the lineup builder as well. 25% off. Use the promo code Gold Rush at awesemo.com/promo. So it includes MLB as well. And then you've got NBA Live Before Lock immediately after that. Josh, I guess that's what we got going on today. Now it's time to jump into this single game showdown slate.
Yeah, man, let's do it. I had fun talking about it earlier today. Some things have changed. I've made some tweaks to everything I had. So people have moved up, moved down. I tweeted out my sim results a little bit earlier. I guess I don't really, I do have to wait at least a little bit for news, but for right now, I'm feeling pretty comfortable.
I heard you and Kaufman went like an hour 15 on the strategy show.
We had some fun, man. We had some fun.
I heard my name came up as well.
Certainly did. I aired you out pretty good. It was fun.
I don't know what you could possibly air me out about.
I talked a little bit about how your wife thought you were ugly because you shaved your face and she had no interest in sleeping with you. That was
fun. But that's
fun.
not what she said. She preemptively said that. And then afterwards she goes, oh, not nearly as bad as I thought.
Yeah, because she probably saw the hurt on your face after she told you the first time that it was not going to go well for you in the future.
No. That I promise.
I also mentioned that I could be your stand-in if I just wore a purple shirt. So
I promise you, there is no cushioning the blow, especially not last night when it comes to her. Anyway, Adam, we have one game to touch on. Josh mentioned earlier in the show, he said, I don't know who would actually want to watch this game outside of a DFS or betting standpoint, right? And that's why we love all of this, because we can take a shit game and turn it into a good game just based on what we've got on the line. But you, sir, are the exception. You're actually looking forward to this one, hoping that your Wizards can sneak into the postseason.
Yeah, hoping the Wizards can win, then, beat the Sixers so that you're upset and so that I can tell Josh again how good Russell Westbrook is and shut him up. Really, looking forward to the Wizards winning this one.
Yeah, Josh said prior to the show that Russell Westbrook is probably not a top 50 player and that he might take DeAnthony Melton over him if it came down to it. You laugh now because when it's said by somebody else, it sounds egregious, but more so the fact that I think a lot of it is just trying to piss off Adam.
Yeah, well, I hated the Anthony Melton example too, because I think Melton's actually good and better than people realize, but he's not better than Westbrook. Josh's a fucking idiot.
I don't know what to say to that.
Nothing. There's nothing you could say that outside of let's get
I'll take Melton at his contract over Russ on his.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see what Melton does tomorrow when they square off against Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors, and we'll be right back here doing the exact same thing. Let's kick it off with you, Josh, our guest of honor. Start with the Indiana side, and well, on the road against Washington, who lost in the first, the 7-8 game against Boston. Boston gets the 7 seed. Loser of that game goes to this one. Winner of the 9 and 10, for anyone curious, faces the loser of 7 and 8, and Indiana wiped the floor with the Charlotte Hornets. It was just really an embarrassing performance from Charlotte from top to bottom. But the Pacers are 4-point dogs here in a 238 total game. This is one of those games that you'd look at in the regular season and think, well, we'd never get a playoff matchup like this, but let's enjoy it while we can. So before we dive into the individual players, I want to just take a quick look at Showdown Slates and the way to approach these. When you're looking at Showdown Slates where you have a captain spot, or on FanDuel, you're working with the MVP and the star and the pro. What are you doing differently than main slates, and how are you evaluating players differently in terms of, like, do I only play stars in the show or in the captain spot, or can I go balanced? Is there any right way to go about this based on what we've seen since Showdown was introduced?
I don't think that I'm doing anything all that different. When push comes to shove, I'm just trying to use my data to get lineups built as optimally as I can. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but there are little intricacies across both FanDuel and DraftKings that are important. FanDuel, you do not have a price change across the different spots. So it's the same to roster someone at utility as it is at pro, as it is at star, as it is at MVP, but there are point differentials for that and bonuses. So you're not really ever going to be in a situation where you're playing Russell Westbrook in the utility spot. Or if you are, you're probably making a giant mistake. Raw points matter significantly more on FanDuel. On DraftKings, you can get away with a lower priced captain because it's allowing you to fit in significantly more higher end plays in the flex spots. So it's a very different mechanism across both games. I prefer actually the DraftKings mode. So for anybody that's been listening to me talk FanDuel for the past however many months the NBA season is going on, congratulations. That's going to be it for me. I'm going to be playing almost exclusively on DraftKings. I will have the FanDuel data, but I prefer going to DK because I think it's just a better game. At captain, you can pay down. Each game is going to be a little bit different. Like today in particular, my expectation is that Sabonis, Russ, or Bradley Beal are the 3 primary captains. You're really going to need an outlier game for it to be one of the alternative guys. As of right now, I have it with, let's see, what's the total? An 18% chance that it's not one of those 3 main guys. So more often than not, you're going to be seeing one of the 3 studs up top.
Beardless is better. Handsome exclamation point. Well, that's very nice comment coming from chat. I got the burners.
I'm sure it's a bot.
I got the burners hooked up today, baby. Yeah, I can't wait till Igor comes in hot. And hey, appreciate you guys. I know 3-man crew. We got to do something different. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. It'll probably be a lesser viewed show than normal because it's early. Lock is a ways away. We're doing it usually an hour later than this, but we're working baseball in. So thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. That's really the biggest way to help us here at Awesemo to continue to be the #1 DFS provider on YouTube. God, that feels good. Adam, do you look at the captain spot today on DraftKings specifically and think, like, I have to get to Westbrook, or I have to get to Sabonis, or I have to get to Beal?
Kind of, yeah. Like, I agree with what Josh was saying, and I think his point about it being kind of different on a game-to-game basis is really important because there's going to be some games where, it would make sense maybe to play a cheaper guy at captain so that you can afford to get, a bunch of stars into your lineup. But with the way both of these, with how top heavy really both of these teams are, it's not like there's a bunch of stars beyond the main three guys. You have Beal, you have Sabonis, you have Westbrook. It's extremely likely that one of those guys is the highest scorer on the slate. And then the rest of the team, outside, you can make a case for Brogdon. But outside of Brogdon, the rest of this team, of both teams, is kind of just, mediocre fantasy guys where there's not a huge difference between them. Like, I don't care if I'm rounding out my lineup with Justin Holiday or Davis Bertans or Ish Smith or Doug McDermott. Like, it doesn't matter. They're more or less the same type of guys. So I don't think in this particular game with these two teams, there's that much of an advantage, or there is an advantage to be had by paying down at captain, because really all it's going to end up gaining you is that you get, a slightly better, very mediocre player than you would if you just paid up at captain.
All right, Josh, let's dive into it. It's finally time. Indiana Pacers, Domantas Sabonis last game only played 33 minutes. But if you looked at how out of hand and out of control that game got, right? At one point, they were up by 39 points. He was on pace in a competitive game, had it been that, to play 42 minutes or so. He played all but 3 minutes in the first half. Sabonis played 21 minutes in the first half, came back, played the entire third quarter, had 12 and 12 in that, 12 points, 12 peripherals, according to Popcorn Machine. And likely, if it was close, would have played another 9 minutes in the fourth quarter. Those are huge minutes for a guy that flirts with or achieves triple doubles every single night recently. And Brogdon being back didn't seem to hurt him much at all, even though Brogdon only played 21 minutes.
Yeah, this shouldn't be very surprising, but Domantas Sabonis looks like an absolutely stellar play across FanDuel and DraftKings, and quite clearly the top play on Indiana. I don't really know if there's like any sort of hot take for Sabonis. You're expecting him to score, I don't know, like 25 plus with 15 boards and X amount of assists, and he's going to be flirting with a triple double. If this game stays close, at the very least, they're going to have him to do that because there's no LeVert, because we have no concept of the literal health of Malcolm Brogdon. So to me, it's just play a ton of Sabonis. I actually think he's under-owned at the captain spot right now. I'd be happy to get more. I think he's slightly over-owned at the flex spot on DK. So I would just want to transition that ownership. I do think that he should be owned in the 85% range, the same way that we're seeing it in the ownership. I just think the allocation is a little off. On FanDuel, to me, he's the second best play behind Russell Westbrook. I want to have a ton of him. And I would say that I would want to have most of it, if not all of it, in either the MVP spot or the star spot. I don't think that there's a lot of utility in pro and utility here, especially because he's picking up 27% ownership in either the pro spot or the utility spot on FanDuel. To me, that's a mistake. I want him in MVP or star.
Okay. Yeah, Adam, our ownership shows that Sabonis has like 90% total ownership on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's got about 88%. And then as Josh just mentioned, the MVP star and pro spots. But on DraftKings, Westbrook has almost 97% ownership, 32% captain spot. Domantas Sabonis at 25% captain spot. I guess that makes sense just given the price difference here. If you're playing him at captain, you're paying 16.8 for Sabonis and 20,100 for Russell Westbrook. Just in the utility, 13.4 for Westbrook and 11.2 from Sabonis. Not to jump around too much, but I think it's hard to stick with just one team when we're comparing against each other. Does Sabonis's price point make sense to you against Westbrook and vice versa? Like, is Westbrook overpriced or underpriced compared to Sabonis here?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're both pretty much where they should be, but I think I agree that the ownership just doesn't seem high enough for me, or to me, in the captain spot. Obviously they're getting a ton of combined ownership, but on DraftKings, for example, we have like 33% ownership projected to go to someone that is not named Westbrook, Sabonis, Beal, or Brogdon. That just seems really, really weird to me, given the alternatives on these two teams. So I think it's a situation where I would end up just getting more Sabonis than the 25%, probably getting more Westbrook than 31%, and just like kind of rolling through some of these other cheap guys in the utility spots, as opposed to, not getting as much at captains, of Sabonis and Westbrook. So I think it's a great spot for Sabonis. He's playing huge minutes. He's played 7 games this year without Miles Turner, and with Brogdon active, he's averaged 1.4 DraftKings points per minute. Usage rate still at 24.5%, assist percentage is at 24%. And then you also have to keep in mind that maybe we don't see, a full strength Brogdon either. That's a pretty big question mark here. So to me, you know, outside of Westbrook, Sabonis is just clearly the top play.
What did you make of Malcolm Brogdon last game out? 21 minutes, again, monster blowout, 144 to 117. He played 6 minutes, I think it was, in the first quarter, as they talked about 5 or 6 minute stints. And then you and I were like, well, that doesn't necessarily seem likely. And then he played 8.5 minutes in the second quarter, followed by 6.5 minutes in the third quarter, never returned. So if you were to give him around 9 minutes again in the fourth quarter, assuming you have a similar rotation here, he's getting 30 minutes. Is that enough? Probably not. But do you see elevated playing time if this game's close, or is it too tough to project right now?
I think it's certainly possible. Like, we don't have a quote, you know, saying he's not going to play more minutes. I thought he looked fine against Charlotte. It wasn't like, you know, like with Bradley Beal, for example, especially in the game against Charlotte and the regular season, you could tell Beal was still hurt. I didn't really get that feeling from Brogdon. And then one other point they actually made on the game that I hadn't thought of, but that I thought made sense, was that with Brogdon's playing style, it's probably a little bit easier for him to come back from an injury like that, because the way they put it was he plays low to the ground. He's not, you know, doing as much, you know, jumping and stuff like that as some other guys. Like, his game isn't dependent on that. So that maybe benefits him a little bit as well. I thought that was an interesting point. But again, it's just, you know, in a game where obviously it's a must-win game, to me, I expect it just to come down to how he's feeling. You know, I don't think that, you know, they're probably coming into the game again saying, you know, okay, we'll, you know, play him X number of minutes and see how he's feeling. But it wouldn't make any sense, you know, if he feels fine, to just be like, okay, well, we're still going to cap you at 30 minutes. You know, hopefully we don't lose. Like, it just wouldn't make any sense if he's not struggling.
Yeah. Where's your read on Brogdon today? How many minutes are you giving him, Josh?
I think I have him at 32, but let me just double check. I don't want to be wrong.
That sounds about right.
I gave him 33, actually. I took a lap through player props earlier today, and when I had him in at 32, I was still a little light on the points prop. So I just wanted to give him like a little bit of a nudge, because to me, that was just kind of telling me maybe I don't have him playing enough.
There's a few comments about Goga Bitadze, Josh, and can we at least be very clear about what happened last game? He was really good, and he was really good specifically in the fourth quarter, where he played 12 of his 19 minutes, where he had 11 of his points, and I think almost all of his peripherals, finished with 14, 10, and 1 with 3 blocks and a steal. Huge game. What a difference maker it was. The only way he's getting close to that is if this game is not competitive, and even if it is, even if it isn't, he played 19 minutes.
Yeah. He's not playing 19 minutes again, unless the game is just out of hand in one of the two directions.
Right.
But at 4,200.
39.
Yeah. God, what a ridiculous game. So I gave him 16 minutes, actually, because I think that we could see him play, you know, a couple extras. And I do want to account for the possibility that he could be out there if this game does go squirrely a little bit. He's projected for 15% ownership. To me, that's right where it should be. He's 4,200 on DraftKings. On the FanDuel side, Goga is 9,500. To me, shows up in the optimal about 8% of the time. That's exactly where his ownership is. So he's a non-issue to me. If I see him in a lineup, that's fine. I'm expecting to see between like 5 to 10% on FanDuel, 10 to 15 on DraftKings, and I'm just going to call it a day. I don't find him all that interesting. I don't find him bad. He just sort of is.
Yeah, and I feel that's pretty common with a lot of these indie bench players, Adam. Don't worry, we'll get to a few other guys working our way around this team. For O'Shea Brissett, excuse me, Doug McDermott, Holiday. Are there any bench options that are viable to you tonight? Because this is a showdown slate. This isn't one of those, just play good players, right? It doesn't really work like that on a night like tonight. And maybe Washington has some outlets that we can get to. But are there any just dirt cheap options that could get 15 minutes here? And I guess that's why people mention Bitadze. This is a showdown slate. It's not a 3-game slate. If Bitadze plays 12 minutes, 14 minutes, maybe that's enough to get you 1.5 fantasy points per minute. Are there any like high enough per minute guys, Adam, that stand out as, okay, maybe he only plays 15 minutes, but that 15 minutes could be enough at his price point?
I mean, Not really. Like Batadze is the one, really good point per minute guy off the bench for Indiana. The concerns are the same things that Josh said. The one thing I will point out though that I think is kind of interesting, Daniel Gafford right now is projected for like 2+ times the ownership of Batadze. I think Gafford clearly is the better play because he's more likely to be the one that plays 20+ minutes. But on average, like you can see this game play out where Daniel Gafford plays 2 minutes more than Goga Batadze does at basically the same price point. So I think that's kind of an interesting one where, like, if in a vacuum, if I have to pick one, I'm still choosing Gafford, but maybe the ownership gap's a little bit bigger than it should be. Beyond that, though, with Indiana, it's just you get hurt because of it being a playoff game. Like you're just not getting as many minutes off the bench. Keelan Martin in the first half against Charlotte played like 7 minutes. Edmund Sumner played like 7 minutes in the first half. Actually, Edmund Sumner played like 7 minutes in the game. Holiday played about 5 minutes in the first half. It's just really, really tough to get to these guys unless you are basically building a lineup where you think that the fourth quarter is played by players on the bench.
Yeah. What about Justin Holiday though, Josh? Here's a weird one because the ownership's coming in big on him on DraftKings and on FanDuel. He's really not that the pricing, of course, on FanDuel for these is wild. Like you see 9,500 and it seems exorbitant, but it's really not. $5,000 utility spot on DraftKings. He's getting significant top four ownership on DraftKings, top 4 on FanDuel as well. Are you on board with that?
So it's tricky. And this is going to be the one piece of information that we actually need to find out. I think a lot of that has to do with the status of Edmund Sumner tonight. He left the first game, not because he wasn't going to continue to be in the rotation. They took him out because whatever, I can't remember his injury off the top of my head, hamstring, I believe, but I could be wrong. They took him out because that flared up and he was not going back out on the floor. If Edmund Sumner's not playing today, then yeah, Justin Holiday is going to, I assume, play 34, 36 minutes because there's no Levert. They just don't have that many other capable bodies on the wing. He's going to get those minutes. If Edmund Sumner is in, I think you have to kind of roll Justin Holiday back at least a little bit. And at that point in time, he's still an okay play because he's going to play, I would imagine, 30 minutes. But he's not exactly a stellar per minute fantasy player. So the status of Sumner drives most of this for me, at least right now.
Yeah, Sumner played 7 minutes last game, Adam, and all of those came in the first half. He didn't see the court in the second half. Was that due to injury? Like, do we have a confirmation that he was injured?
Do you want to tell him or should I, Josh?
Did Josh just say that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured as much. Sorry, I get caught up reading chat, and I had to run and turn the fan on because
I was going to say, reading chat, you weren't even at your desk.
Well, I was doing
see you in your seat. No wonder you don't know what I'm saying.
What I did is I pulled it up here, right, and then walked to the fan while I was reading chat. I was multitasking, so in a way, it was more impressive than not.
Next time you multitask, you should try doing the actual task that matters.
Well, if that's listening to you, then I'm out of work.
That's fair.
Adam, what are your thoughts on Holiday if Edmund Sumner plays?
Pretty much, to echo what Josh said, like I still think Holiday.
Well, I didn't hear any of that, so just say it all again.
I still think Holiday's a good value. I mean, he's only $5K. He's probably playing 30 to 32 minutes or something like that if Sumner is in. But there is, he just becomes like a little bit riskier because not only do you probably lose a couple of minutes off the top, but you get a little bit more of like a hot hand situation where coming down the stretch of this game, if TJ McConnell's playing really well, he could close over Holiday. If Sumner's playing well, he can close over Holiday. If Aaron Holiday's playing well, he can close over Justin. Like it's just one more body that, potentially can take minutes, but on average, you're still expecting Justin Holiday to get 30 to 32 minutes. So I think that he's still a little bit underpriced, but it's definitely someone that doesn't produce at a very high rate. So where he's in 37% of lineups on DraftKings, if you can find ways to go to some other guys that are lower owned, that's certainly not a spot where I would be very scared of like not having Justin Holiday.
Josh, we saw Brogdon play 21 minutes. Like we all said, you got him at what you said, 32 minutes. I think that's a reasonable projection there. What does that do to TJ McConnell today? He played 25 minutes and got like basically the same rotation in the first and second half, didn't close it out in garbage time over the last 5 minutes. So it seemed like a pretty average rotation for McConnell. And that was with Brogdon playing 21 minutes.
I mean, he's like on DK at 8K. I have him as the 7th best play from the Pacers. And that's with the assumption that I don't have Sumner in. He's just priced up. On FanDuel, he's 12.5. That's the 3rd most expensive guy from Indiana. He's like close to not playable given that salary. Shows up in the optimal about 7% of the time. He's just not a guy you're going to get to a lot because his price is outpacing what I expect him to be doing. Now, if he goes out there and rips out six steals or something like that and has one of those crazy McConnell games, he can get there. I don't see him as like a really good play or interesting play. I think you would need Brogdon to be out for him to just really start to pop. He's kind of priced like Brogdon's not playing.
On a showdown slate, right? And I don't disagree with you at that price. It's pretty prohibitive, especially when you're trying to jam in top players like Sabonis and Russell Westbrook. What makes, and this might seem like a super rudimentary question, but for Showdown, I don't think it is. And I would assume there are plenty of people that are relatively new to Showdown. What makes a good contrarian or low-owned option in Showdown where it's so scarce, right? That if you're finding someone that's low-owned, there's obviously a lot of boxes that they don't check. What boxes do we need them to check to say, you know what, they're at least worthwhile here at such low ownership? It can make the one Showdown slate I've won was because I had a 2% owned player in Monty Morris, right? Like it can happen. Yeah. It's just tough.
Yeah. It's tricky today because my first thought would be like, oh, well, you're looking for a low price guy that isn't getting the playing time that you would expect. But then you go ahead and you look at the ownership on Robin Lopez and Alex Len. It's like, all right, well, they're already expected to be in a third of the lineups. We're basically saying that we expect one of the Wizard centers to be in the optimal lineup today. We just don't know which one it is. This is going to sound ridiculous, but it's the same way that it normally is. And the boom bust tool that we have is the easiest way to see this. You're trying to play the best guys that you can find while also paying attention to leverage, how often they're in the optimal lineup in comparison to their ownership. You're going to be able to find positive numbers on every single slate. It's just natural. It's never going to be spot on. You just want to work in more high leverage plays. I don't think that there's like a particular recipe that you can use to get to that because every single game slate is just so different given who's available and just the status of every single team, the rotations, the size of rotations. You know, some of these teams going a little bit deeper than others. So really it's the same as it usually is. Look for leverage plays, guys that have higher optimal percentages than have ownership.
That's a good answer. Anything to add to that, Adam?
Yeah, I guess just that within each team also, when you're trying to find, relatively low owned guys that, maybe there's some playing time volatility, just kind of thinking about where the biggest question marks are in the rotation. When you look at the Wizards, there's a couple of spots, one being the center position where we really don't know how Scott Brooks is going to allocate minutes, but we do know about 48 minutes are going to go to a combination of Len, Lopez, and Gafford. So in any one game, there's certainly the chance that you get, 24 minutes from Robin Lopez or from Gafford, even though they average, 15, 16 minutes per game. The other spot on the Wizards is the Garrison Matthews / Chandler Hutchison role, where there's no guarantee those guys even play a lot of minutes. They combined for like 14 minutes the last time they played the Pacers. In the last game against the Celtics, they combined for about 22 minutes. Matthews didn't play it all in the first half. Hutchison didn't play it all in the second half outside of garbage time. But that's one spot where if you've paid attention to the Wizards this year, you've seen Scott Brooks kind of just on a game-by-game basis do some weird stuff. And, sometimes you just end up getting more Chandler Hutchison than you expect. And then on the Pacers, the spot that you're really looking at there is the Aaron Holiday, Keelan Martin, Edmund Sumner, if he's active. There's not, on average, you're probably not getting enough minutes from any of those guys for them to be great plays, but they can potentially sort of take minutes from each other if one of them's playing really well. And it's a spot where, you can see one of them play several minutes more than they normally do in any given game.
And Josh, one of the other reasons I asked that is because on a 6-game slate, even like a 5-game slate, you could go pretty chalky and you could still not maybe be duped at the top. But on a Showdown slate, if you go chalky, even if you go mostly chalky, you're still going to have a lot of people running that exact same lineup. So I think that's why being able to diversify without being just flat out dumb is so important when you're talking single game slates.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the big piece. That's why we're running promos right now. You can get in and see this sort of stuff on the back end. Having that data in front of you is what's going to allow you to
What's that promo? What's that amazing promo code?
One of them is Gold Rush, which is
no.
normal.
What's the Showdown? No, that's great compared to the other one.
Yeah, well, I was leading with the good.
Oh, did you say normal? I thought you said horrible. My fault. Okay.
No. The normal promo code is Gold Rush, which is a great one for you to get into. The other one would be play-in. Go to awesemo.com/promos, I believe, to save yourself the trouble of screwing that one up.
You can just click.
Play-in as well. Getting behind the paywall and getting access to some of this data is just going to allow you to build higher upside lineups that are slightly differentiated, lower your dupes, and just increase your EV on that individual lineup.
And while neither of us are huge on the name play-in because it makes it so difficult when you're trying to put that in, awesemo.com/promos, you could just click on it. But the reason Josh brought that up is because it is specifically so you can get all of our Showdown content for NBA. It's the Express Pass, which is usually $4.95 a week. Well, it's still $4.95 a week, except you get the second week or the first week, however you want to look at it, entirely free. So you're getting 1 week and then an entire week free when you use that promo code play-in or go to awesemo.com/promos. All of our Showdown tools, not just content, not just articles, all of our Showdown tools for NBA come with the Express Pass on top of all of the other tools that are already included in that. So you got nothing to lose. It's less than $5 for 2 weeks, and you're going to have huge, we've already seen it, huge Showdown contest, 450,000, 100K up top today on DraftKings for a Pacers-Wizards game. That's why we say we don't care who's actually playing, as long as there's money to be made, and there's certainly a lot. So use that or Gold Rush to get 25% off everything on the site for an entire month. That expires today. One of them expires to play-in is over tomorrow. So take advantage of that. Go to awesemo.com/promos. All right, Adam, let's round out the Pacers here. You have McConnell, we hit on Sabonis, Brogdon, Holiday, Batadze, all of the important things to get to, even the bench options. The last two guys, we're leaving no stone unturned here on the deeper dive, are Oshae Brissett and Doug McDermott. Where do we head with either of these two guys tonight?
Yes, I mean, McDermott and Brissett both are priced up a bit. 6,200 on DraftKings for McDermott, 7,400 for Brissett. I think that the ownership looks about where I would expect it to. Like, you're getting about 30% total going to McDermott. You're getting about 20% going to Brissett. I think that, you can expect mid-30s in minutes from Brissett. You also, with McDermott, get a relatively wide range of playing time. He's another one similar to Justin Holiday, I think, where if he's shooting well, he's likely to be in the closing lineup, but if he's not, you could certainly see TJ McConnell get closing minutes over McDermott. You expect that Brogdon's going to be in the closing lineup. Sabonis certainly will be in the closing lineup. Brissett most likely, and then I think you're basically getting whoever's playing the best probably out of Justin Holiday, McDermott, McConnell. Maybe, if they're playing really well, one of the other bench guys, but probably two of those three. So I think there is some minutes volatility for McDermott, but he's someone that also probably benefits from this matchup. The fast-paced game here, you're going to get some transition threes from McDermott, probably just some open looks in general. And he's someone that certainly can take advantage of that. He's played well this season. So I still think that, not the best value on the slate, but I think McDermott's still a good player.
Josh, what about you? Do you agree with Adam on both of those two guys?
For the most part, yeah. It's just they're guys on this slate. And you see it in the ownership as well. They're just kind of smack dab in the middle of everything. I mean, obviously McDermott went on that little bit of a heater last time out, but I have him as the third most optimal guy on FanDuel, but at the same time, it's basically the same as Brissett, basically the same as Holiday. Those guys are coming in with essentially the exact same projected ownership. On the FanDuel side, McDermott and Holiday are coming in with very comparable ownership. I've got them as very comparable in terms of sim odds. Oshae Brissett, same story, right around 20%. These are the guys that are just the guys that you rotate through. To me, it's really obvious at the top, and you're hoping to hit the right pay down option. And then you just kind of have to cycle through the middle stuff because the glut in the middle is tricky.
Yeah, it is. But it's funny because in the middle, you talk about rotating through them. It's really just like, you can't argue that any of them are bad plays because there's one game, and you can't argue that any of them are particularly good plays. They're just plays.
Yeah, exactly. Like Oshae Brissett to me is the perfect example of that. I have no real take on Oshae Brissett. He's 7,400 on DraftKings. He's 11.5 on FanDuel. And to me, he is like spot on his ownership. I don't love him. I don't hate him. I'm going to have like 30% of him, and I hope that I just have him in the right lineup.
All right. You know, it's weird on these showdown slates, Adam, because normally we'd be doing the deeper dive saying, man, what a great pace up spot this is. 238.5 total, only a 4-point spread, two of the fastest paced teams in the league, two inferior defenses, this and that. But it doesn't matter because it's the only game on the slate. So like it doesn't make a difference. Everyone's going to the exact same game. But Washington gets interesting for a couple reasons, and we will hit on Len, we'll hit on Gafford, we'll hit on Ish Smith, and of course, Davis Bertens. But first, Russell Westbrook, borderline top 50 player in this league, according to Josh Engelman. Is he a borderline top play today for you?
Yeah, I mean, of course, like he's the top.
I just, you never know.
Yeah, no, I hate him. Yeah, I mean, he's the top projected player on the slate. He's gonna play like the entire game. He played 37 minutes against Boston, sat almost the last 4 minutes of that game. I expect you're getting 40 plus minutes from Westbrook tonight. He's, we know what he's done since the All-Star break. He's been healthy. He's triple doubling every game. There's just nothing negative to say about Westbrook. And again, it also goes back to what I was saying at the top about there's not really good mid-range guys on either of these teams that you are like really excited to get into your lineups. So if there were, you could a little bit easier make that argument for, okay, well, what if I just don't play Westbrook because he's really, really popular, and I try and, get lucky with, some mid-range guy scoring 50 fantasy points. Like those guys don't exist. Rui's not scoring 50, or if he does, it's very, very surprising. Same goes for Bertans. Same goes for Justin Holiday and McDermott on the other side. Like it's just so difficult to build a lineup that has a chance at winning that does not have Russell Westbrook, unless you're specifically saying like, what if Westbrook gets hurt in the first quarter, and then you're just playing like, the Wizards that would benefit. Outside of a thing like that, I don't really know how you get away from Westbrook.
And Westbrook never gets hurt.
He was playing through a torn quad for half the season.
But that's what okay. You're right. Okay,
I'm agreeing with you.
You're right. He never doesn't play. I mean, he's an Iron Man. Before that one season, remember that one season where he missed a bunch of games? I don't think he had missed an NBA game prior to that season.
Yeah, there was an article by one of the Wizards beat writers recently who had been an Oklahoma City beat writer previously, and it was just talking about like some of the stuff that Westbrook's played through and how difficult it is to get him off the floor.
Where are you right now? You're not at the apartment.
No, I'm at my mom's.
Oh, okay. Wasn't sure. Someone said you're streaming from an interrogation room. I was like, oh yeah, it does look different there.
Yeah, no, going on vacation
Westbrook,
tomorrow.
Anyway, you're getting lineups without him today. 97% projected ownership on DraftKings, 100% on FanDuel.
I mean, yes. I don't think that it's crazy to have a lineup that doesn't have Russell Westbrook, particularly if you're going to a Beal heavy lineup. But to me, that makes a ton of sense on DraftKings. Now, if we're talking about a cash game, no, like he's in there. If he's 100% owned, like you have Russell Westbrook. But to me, I don't think it's crazy to be slightly light on him at the flex spot. I would have a hard time not having Bradley Beal in that particular lineup. But I think that he's ripe for if you're trying to win a large field GPP, I don't think it's crazy to have Sabonis plus Beal instead of having Russell Westbrook. 13-4 is a big price tag on a showdown slate where you also then have to get whatever it is at the bottom correct. That's tricky. Now, let's be clear here. He is, if not the best play, the second best play on this slate. He should be one of the two guys you have the most of. But if he really is 96.6% owned on the showdown, I would like to have slightly less than that.
I'm just curious, though. You bring up a good point. Is it possible that so let's assume this much. Let's just say you throw Beal into your captain spot on DraftKings, and you have Westbrook and Sabonis. That gives you about $3,400 per player remaining. Even if you were to throw like Alex Len in there and Daniel Gafford, it is doable to make a lineup. It's just not going to look great. Is it possible that you could see a Beal Sabonis lineup and then just better players than some of these super low end scrubs being viable without Westbrook, if Westbrook maybe only scores like 50?
Yeah. To me, yes. It all comes, especially right now, if we think that Bradley Beal's captain ownership is correct at 8%, that's just a spot where I would naturally want to get more and hope that Beal either maybe doesn't necessarily outscore Westbrook, but comes pretty damn close.
I think we got to get your response to that too, Adam.
So I think I'll go a step further. If you're not playing Westbrook, yeah, I agree on Beal. I think you need to be playing Brogdon too.
Yeah.
And the reason is that we don't really know, what Brogdon's, minutes are going to look like, but he's like the one other guy in this game that has the potential to go get a ton of fantasy points. I guess you could make that argument for McConnell too, like, because we know he can put up big games, but Brogdon, I think, like, if you're not playing Westbrook, you're going to have the money. To me, it's just not worth not playing Westbrook if the benefit that you get is that, like, you get to roster O'Shea Brissett instead of Justin Holiday. Like, who the hell cares? But I think, if you do something like Beal captain with Sabonis and Brogdon, that's something that at least has a path.
David Velazquez says, why would I sign up for Awesemo when y'all beat a dead horse talking about one game for over an hour? Well, this is what's that?
My recommendation would be to stop listening.
This is the NBA Deeper Dive. Coming up right after this, MLB Live Before Lock, then NBA Live Before Lock. I'll tell you this one. So one of the reasons we will talk about this for an hour is because, one, people like to listen. Two, the prize pools are still markedly bigger than any MLB contest tonight. And we have one game. So that's why.
I can't believe somebody's holding a gun to his head, forcing him to watch this show right now. Craziness.
It is unfortunate, but
is it?
You could have a gun held to your head and be forced to watch many worse things than this.
Yeah, that's also true. Like tonight's basketball game.
Yeah. Listen, baseball's coming up next. And then NBA Live Before Lock. We got plenty for you. A full block, 3 hours of shows today. Eytan Shander and Gundacker coming up next. Oh, bro, Gundacker. This man knows his baseball. And then Spags and Greg to close it out. MLB or MMA strategy show also at 8 p.m. So we got 4 hours of shows coming down the pike. Now let's talk about Beal for a minute here, Adam, because Bradley Beal is one of the strange spots today where captain spot ownership is going to be really low on him. And I think rightfully so. Like, you'd still rather play Westbrook or Sabonis at the captain spot any day of the week, but he's getting a fraction of ownership in the captain spot to these other top guys.
Yeah, which is, I think, kind of interesting because, it's so hard for him to outscore either of Sabonis or Westbrook because of the peripherals that they give you. But he is also discounted a little bit, especially off of Westbrook. He's 3,200 less on DraftKings, and we know Beal is capable of going out there and just scoring 40, 50, actual points. Not that it's the most likely outcome, but he certainly can do it. And so I think if you're not playing Westbrook or Sabonis at captain, again, it kind of just, in my opinion, has to be Beal or Brogdon.
Yeah. All right. What about some of the center rotation guys, Josh, with Alex Len, Gafford, Robin Lopez? You and I spoke at length about this just the other day on the strategy show when we were talking about the same thing, saying, we'll give them all like 16 minutes and see how that goes down. I think Gafford at least is somebody who played 21 minutes last time. I would assume the last couple of minutes were in blowout run. I think the last 2 minutes that he got were. But it's hard to say what to expect here with this 3-man center rotation.
Yeah, and I don't really feel like I'm going to be in any position to do it any justice. I don't want to say that I would rather throw this to Adam, but he's got a better pulse of the center rotation for Washington right now. I think it's what'd you say?
He said, no, I don't.
Scott Brooks doesn't know what it's going to be.
Also true. Also, it's probably just going to be Rui at the 5 today since they can do that in this one. I think it's really fascinating to see that Robin Lopez, Alex Len, and Daniel Gafford are projected for 94.3% ownership in the aggregate, which is basically saying that every lineup is going to have one of them. Now, that's not what it's actually saying, but the large majority are going to have one of those centers. That's scary to me. I almost feel like all of them are slightly overowned in some way, but at the same time, when my data spit it out, I'd be over the field on Robin Lopez and Alex Len. I guess the moral of this story right now is I don't have a damn clue what to do with the Wizards center rotation.
Yeah, I don't either. And Adam, the same thing to you, but also how many of them are you willing to play? Can you go Russell Westbrook, Bradley Beal, and Sabonis with, say, Beal in the captain spot, or maybe even maybe even Sabonis, and then play 2 of the centers from Washington and get away with it?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of sucks. In cash, you can for sure. I mean, no doubt about it, you can in cash. In tournaments, you still can, because especially Lopez and Len are so cheap that it opens up a lot for you. The problem that you run into, outside of the fact that, of course, they negatively correlate, the problem you run into is like that's going to be a popular build too. Like
Real
a lot of teams that have Sabonis, Westbrook, Beal with one of them at captain, they're just going to have two of the Washington centers, most likely Lopez and Len. So it's kind of tricky because there's just going to be so much overlap there. But at the same time, I mean, you know that they're going to get minutes, and they are two of the cheapest options on the slate. And there's enough volatility in their minutes that they're, reasonable plays. Len's a pretty good fantasy producer, but he's pretty clearly third as far as who Scott Brooks looks to play. I really actually have no idea why he's in the rotation. Like, I don't know why they're not just giving 48 minutes to Lopez and Gafford, but they insist on Len. So you're probably getting like 12 minutes there. You're probably getting like 16 to 20 from each of Lopez and Gafford. We know Gafford's the best fantasy producer out of the three, but he's also the most expensive. So yeah, it's kind of just, there's nothing really good to say about it here. It's just kind of, it is what it is. Like, they're cheap, they're going to play, they look better than a lot of, they look better than guys like Edmund Sumner that we don't know if he's going to play. We don't know how many minutes. They look better than guys like Aaron Holiday, but it's still just a pretty gross spot. I think that Len is probably the one that I feel the worst about, just because, like, you can see how Gafford puts up a big enough score that you have to have him. You can see how Lopez does. With Len, it's kind of just like he's getting into these lineups just because of the price point and nothing else, because there's really nothing to suggest that we're suddenly going to get a 20-minute game from Alex Len.
Right. No, exactly right. And I will say too, Josh, just thinking about this now, it's a weird night when Washington's on a showdown slate, because it's like they have two players and then just a bunch of other guys where you'd normally stay far away from them. But all of these guys are so cheap that they actually make for good plays now where they probably shouldn't.
Yeah, that's the real issue here, because to me, it's quite a bit different on FanDuel. Like, Robin Lopez is only getting 20% ownership. To me, I think he's massively over-owned at 8K. Alex Len is 7,500, so $500 cheaper. His ownership seems about right to me. And then we get Gafford, who's 10K on FanDuel. That's the same price as Doug McDermott. I just have a lot more faith in Doug McDermott going out there for 10K than I do for Gafford. Now, McDermott is picking up slightly more ownership, but it's a lot easier to get away from the centers on FanDuel and go slightly different directions for value than it is on DraftKings, where you're almost forced to scoop up a Lopez or a Len because of their prices are so cheap. And the other alternative is going to someone like Chandler Hutchison at $1,000, but even he's already getting that ownership.
One other thing I'll throw in too, just to kind of reiterate how much of, like, it's just a dart throw here. Alex Len did play 20 minutes the last time they faced the Pacers. Part of that was Gafford picked up 3 fouls in 2 minutes and 15 seconds in the first quarter. But Len, he still didn't play in the fourth, but he played 19.9 minutes. So, I mean, there's, I guess I said that you're not, Len's not playing 20 minutes. He's most likely not, but you really just have to go back to the last time these teams played to see Len play 20 minutes.
Yeah. I just made a lineup to see what it looked like with Beal at the captain and Westbrook and Sabonis. And well, it ended up with 5 Washington Wizards. So
there you go.
But it speaks to the point that these Wizards players aren't good, but on DraftKings, they're all kind of good plays just because they're so underpriced. Adam, sticking with you here, let's round out the rest of the Wizards team. Rui Hachimura, Davis Bertans, and Ish Smith, who's coming off a really solid effort himself, and was that one guy off the bench that was decent when Davis Bertans shot 0 for 8 and just continued being terrible.
Yeah, and one other piece I'll throw in there is Raul Neto, who is right now projected for less than 10% ownership. I think that's kind of interesting just because, he played 17 minutes last game. He lost a bunch of minutes to Ish Smith. I do think that Smith's probably going to play a bunch of minutes again tonight. But Neto's averaging 27 minutes per game in his starts with Westbrook and Beal this year. He's someone that certainly is capable of playing quality minutes. And, and we know that they're willing to go with these small lineups where they have two, Neto plus Westbrook plus Beal. So, I think it is kind of Neto's just like, I think got a little bit higher ceiling than his ownership suggests right now, even though on average he's not going to do that well for his salary. But as far as the other guys go, you should get around 30 minutes again for Bertans. He benefited from Rui's foul trouble against Boston. Rui should get more than the 16 or 17 minutes he played against the Celtics. I'm assuming you get 30 plus from him too. They're both just kind of the O'Shea, Brissett, and Doug McDermott's of Washington, I think, where I'm not going to be really excited about Bertans or Rui. I'm not going to be upset that I get to them. They're kind of just priced where they should be, I think.
Josh, given that you are a true Russell Westbrook hater, but also very fond of Davis Bertans, and in the sense that the other day you said, you know what, I still think this man is great, despite, being here. I'm paraphrasing, right?
Noted.
Is he great today?
No, he's like he normally is. He's average. 4,400. I got him in the optimal 29% of the time. We have him at 32% ownership. I will say this: I have no interest in really putting him in the captain spot, at which point I think that is an easy spot to just not go with 5% of the field. On the FanDuel side, he's 9K, probably owned properly. And you know exactly what you need to happen. He needs to have an outlier shooting day where he takes, I don't know, call it 13 threes and he makes 7, 8 of them, something like that. That's what you need out of out of Bertans today. Can it happen? Yeah. I'm looking to get him probably 30% of the time. But again, to me, he's just a guy. He's not one of the guys that's creating this big gap between my expectations and the current ownership. He's spot on today.
And you're right, though. Can it happen? Yeah. As bad as he's been, we see this stuff happen pretty frequently across the league where someone like Bertans just gets really hot and has a huge game shooting. It doesn't mean we think it's going to continue, but could he go 8 of 13 or 7 of 13 from beyond the arc? Yeah, he could.
Yeah, he could. Yeah. I mean, look, that's the only thing that he can do. He's not going to be putting those stats up in many different ways. He's not going to have a triple double or block 6 shots or something stupid. If he's not stroking threes, he's not a part of anything valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's not rebounding.
He's not rebounding. He's not doing anything else other than, you got to get him open so he can get a shot off that doesn't brick. But Adam, he's getting a lot of ownership, and Rui Hachimura is yet another option on this team that we speak of a lot, but more so just in passing. He's getting, I think he falls into that same Doug McDermott category, and Bertans is kind of, as Josh was pointing out. Is there anything here in the middle kind of pricing of this Washington team? Because you have Beal and Westbrook up top, and then at the bottom you got all those centers.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing that really stands out. I think that comparison to, McDermott and Brissett is accurate. It kind of just goes back to what, I was saying earlier about both of these teams being so top heavy. The mid-range of players on these teams just kind of suck from, a fantasy standpoint. Rui's averaged 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute in the games that Beal and Westbrook have both been active this year. He might play 33 or 34 minutes in a fast-paced game, but the Wizards most likely are not running their offense through Rui in this game. So it's still pretty limited, what he can do. And I think he's priced about where he should be. It's more so just, if you have $6,800 left over to fill out your lineup, then by all means put him in. But I wouldn't be looking to sacrifice the, actual good fantasy producers in this game so that I can get to more Hachimura.
Anything else on Washington, Josh or Adam?
I don't think I have anything.
So,
all right. So what is the not appropriate? Josh, what do you think? I won't even use the word optimal. I guess you could, but what do you think is the best build on DraftKings and FanDuel today? I'm not asking you for specific players, but in terms of, like, we know that Beal, Westbrook, Sabonis with a bunch of cheap Washington centers is going to be super popular. Is maybe Beal in the captain spot a great way to get away from that? I think, as you pointed out earlier, and I just started making lineups, that could be a great differentiation point that can change things up a lot tonight. Anything else just from an overall strategy standpoint and roster construction approach?
I mean, given everything that I have right now, I do have a dummy crunch in and run, and Beal in the captain spot is the guy that I would say is the most interesting option for you if you're trying to be slightly different, to be at the top of a GPP. If his ownership really is holding around that 7% chance, like, I am going to take my chances that Bradley Beal is slightly more healthy today than he was 2 days ago. That's the big piece for me.
All right. What about you, Adam?
I think it's just getting, I mean, it sounds dumb, but just getting the stars into your lineups at a higher rate than the field, because I just have so much trouble seeing how this game plays out where at least 2 of the Sabonis, Beal, Brogdon, Westbrook, if not 3, have games that you have to have.
Okay. Well, boys, wasn't too hard to get through an hour. David Velazquez is upset, but David Porter says, I say talk about this game up until lock. Do Do you think we could pull that off? Right, we're not doing it. Don't worry. You've got Eytan and Gundacker coming up right after us in just a couple minutes. Do you think though, if someone said, I'll pay you each $2,000, just talk about this game from 5 to 8 o'clock, no side chatter, no leaving the reservation as we do frequently on the strategy show, could we go 3 hours? I think it would be easy.
Yeah, we just take questions the entire time?
No questions.
Oh, well then no.
You don't think so?
To talk about this game for 3 hours without taking questions?
I think it's actually, I think it's doable. You could just get into the dumbest things like, so why is it that Garrison Matthews isn't getting significant minutes in this rotation? And then Adam could give a long, drawn out, convoluted response that doesn't mean anything, but you're still talking about the game. I think it's doable.
Yeah, I mean, the content would suck, but we could definitely do it.
Exactly.
Like we can say words about the Pacers and the Wizards for the next 2 hours.
That's what I mean. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't even have to be relevant, but you're talking about the game. It's doable.
I mean, there are other DFS places out there that talk for very extended amounts of times about nonsense that nobody cares about. So
yeah. And they get paid for it too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for $2,000, I'll give it my best shot. I don't know why we're getting paid.
I'm not talking about this game for 3 hours for $2,000.
What would it take?
I don't know, more than that.
Yeah. I think for $2,000, if I sat here for 3 hours, I'd
that is significantly higher than your current hourly rate. And you're like, nah.
Right.
Yeah, because I don't like, it's incredibly boring to do that for 3 hours, and I don't want to do it.
If it's coming from Josh, who says he would not pick a $20 bill off the street if he found it, you should know you're in the wrong here, Adam. $2,000.
I mean, to be fair, a third of the time I'm not going to be talking and I'm just going to do something else. So it's not like I have to carry it like I normally do.
Right. Yeah, you could just talk about your Westbrook hate and your Davis Bertans love. I caught what you said. I'm just not paying any attention to it.
Fair.
I think that's a smart approach here. Anyway,
generally is.
Thanks as always for hanging out, guys. This has been the Deeper Dive. Eytan, Gundacker coming up next. Then you got Spags and Greg going back to NBA for the Live Before Lock show. And then on a separate stream, it's Jason Floyd and Pete Rogers with the MMA strategy show. Remember, Gold Rush expires after today, 25% off everything on the site. Awesemo plus Platinum for the entire month. All the tools built by the #1 ranked DFS player in the world. And awesemo.com/promos, so you don't have to type this one in. The play-in promo gets you everything for the Express Pass, including every showdown tool we have for NBA for $4.95 for both weeks. 1 week on top of the other for the price of one. Can't beat it. Check it out. We'll see you over there. And be sure to join the Slack chat when you do. Hop in on the community. Hit that thumbs up before you – well, actually, you're not going anywhere. Just hit that thumbs up while you wait. Subscribe to the channel. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Deeper Dive.
Good evening. It is evening as we get you ready for a busy 4-game slate on another Awesemo MLB Live Before Lock. And I know baseball season picking up, a lot of people coming in that are either seasoned veterans here on the Awesemo community or maybe brand new. So we're going to make sure that you are fully prepared for tonight's slate across the board. We even brought in extra guns here. We got extra firepower here from Gundacker to Terry, myself for the next hour. Make sure you jump in on the Awesemo chat, super chats across the board, the premium Slack as well. We even have a fantastic promo that's done today, as you heard Lofty previously, and you'll continue to hear throughout the night. You want to jump in because it's the final day today. Awesemo Plus Platinum, 25% off. Just use our promo code GOLDRUSH. Tonight's show sponsored by Jock Market. All of the great things you normally know and use for the Awesemo.com, all the tools are available to you to coincide with the knowledge and dimes that will be dropped tonight. At Gundacker, of course, on Twitter, at DigitalB21 for Terry. Gentlemen, looking forward to tonight. It's going to be a blast. And I know you guys are both, you can see why they're both smiling real quick, because they continue to pound the Rangers 2-0 earlier today. So both Yankees fans here are having fun already.
I mean, last night was really fun, wasn't it?
All right, fellas.
Yeah, been a fun week with the Yanks taking on those guys. It's been interesting. We saw Kluber go for that no ridiculous out of nowhere. Still not sure I believe. Gun, do you believe at this point with Kluber, just before we get into everything?
So I'm starting to believe that I would trust him in a game 3, but he's still not maybe 1 or 2 yet. I once a team that's not the Rangers, Mariners, or Indians gets no hit, then it's real. Right now, it's just we got to factor that into projections as a potential Ranger outcome, I guess. But hey, there's only like 2 hard hit balls yesterday. It's Rangers still pro baseball team, so yeah. I'll take it. I like what I'm seeing.
Yeah, it's a little weird though that we've seen 6 no-hitters and only 3 teams actually getting no hit. That's really wacky.
AL teams at that, bro. DH for life.
Now, when you say game 3, are you guys already fast forwarding as far as game 3 in the World Series, or is there
game 3 is 7-game series maybe? Yeah. We got Severino's cooking, man. And then I don't know, maybe the trade deadline. I feel like we might grab an outfielder at this rate at the trade deadline.
Fair enough. All right, let's look at this tonight, big picture, and we'll jump into the pitchers as far as top values and where we see it. My guy looks like a lot of people already jumping on the Vince Velazquez train, for better or worse. But just kind of looking at it overall, it's a shorter slate for sure. You only have 4 games, so there's going to be value out there, but a lot of people are going to be open to that value. So just looking at a big picture, Gundacker, how do you kind of maneuver through a shorter slate, like a 4-game slate tonight?
Yeah, so what we're going to see on a 4-gamer is a lot of egregious ownership numbers. Like a guy like Vince Velazquez could be over 60% owned, which when you put all the viable pitchers on the table, you know, he's definitely one of probably the 3 of my favorite guys to attack. And then it's very different than what we've been or then like an 8-game slate where you're not dealing with these egregious numbers. And then 2 things I like to remind people. One, value becomes subjective. If Velazquez only scores 18 DKP tonight, but that's the most any pitcher scores, doesn't matter. He was the best play on the slate, even if the Marlins put up 3 runs or what have you. And the other thing is the leverage is never going to be easier than a slate like this. So if I'm running 100, 150, I can easily get some leverage stacks on like the Marlins, or I think Drew Smiley might get some ownership, some maybe the Pirates, and even Alcantara might get some. So like you can get stacks against the chalk pitchers while still playing the chalk pitchers and not have to do a whole lot extra to leverage yourself or the field. So it is a different beast because of the ownerships being what they are, but it's also, a way to manipulate leverage scores, and it is what it is. You got to play with the cards you're dealt.
Yeah, Terry, I'm curious, on top of just how you overall look at the slate on a shorter slate like we have tonight, is there something that jumps out, usually a mistake that you see made by people when it comes to a shorter slate that normally may work on a larger game slate, or simply just is made mistakenly because it's a smaller slate?
So I think maybe it goes a little bit more the other way, where people on larger slates tend to not stack enough. And we talk about stacking all the time. And it's even more important the more games you have, because you're adding the probability of two teams just going off running and hiding with their scores that they put up. On a shorter slate, you can get away with a little bit less in stacking. So maybe it's a matter of people just understanding that concept and being able to, get that we can put together more like 3-3-2s or, 3-3, 4-2-1-1s and different kinds of combinations, which I think can be key to getting ahead on a slate like this. I'm not looking to throw, 9 different darts and just bullseye positions from different teams or things like that. I still am primarily focused around stacking. I'm going to have at least one full stack in all of my lineups, but the component parts of the other 4 positions on FanDuel might be different than they normally would be, where usually it would be like 3 or 4 from one team in that second spot. That'll be a lot more diversified. I'm going to have a pretty broad range. I'm trying to capture a broad range of outcomes on this slate. You can capture more of the overall slate on a slate this size than you can on a bigger one, kind of obvious statement there, but it makes sense to kind of dip around and put together different parts of these lineups in different ways. You can own, to Gundacker's point, you can own a highly owned lineup in a low owned way. So that's kind of important to look for on a slate like this.
All right, as we'll continue throughout the show, you'll see, as Jordan doing a fantastic job as always producing the show, all of the Awesemo tools that are available to you at awesemo.com, the Awesemo Plus community, and now the Awesemo Plus Platinum community as well. And today we've free content for you and the baseball side for you, the main slate ownership projection. So you want to be using everything you have available to you beyond what you're going to hear from Gundacker and Terry. So let's dive in as far as the pitchers, the top stacks as well. We'll get to in some positions as well as we lead you up to lock tonight. And just looking at the overall top pitchers and where we have it as far as Alex's top stack, and it's Vince Velazquez. And I laugh, of course, because, I'm right here with Laufey, and I think we're the only Philly guys on the channel, but looking at Vince Velazquez, I imagine, right, at Gundacker, we could start here, that there is going to be maybe not even so much knee-jerk reaction anymore because he's done it consistently over the last couple of starts. I personally, and maybe this is the Negadelphia Philadelphia fan in me, but I'm waiting for that other shoe to drop and life to come back to normal. But I can't argue with the results, at least over the last couple of starts from this guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's dangerous to be overly results-orientated. That's why, I guess me and Terry extra skeptical. Our pitcher threw a no-hitter last night, and we just asked each other, "Do we believe?" Like baseball can be very, very tricky. We like to rely on a lot of predictive analytics, like Scherer and xFIP. And the higher owned pitchers today don't reflect great numbers in those analytics, like Scherer. Vince Velazquez rocking a 4.36 Scherer, a 4.2 xFIP. He's essentially chalked because the Marlins are the Marlins, and so you got to play somebody. So that's what I'm kind of getting at today. Is like normally a guy like Velazquez, a guy like Drew Smyly, even Pivetta, like these are guys I would really avoid on main slates because I always feel like they're overvalued. But today, I can't get away from them. I'm going to have to play them. But to that same point, like it's going to make sense to have some Marlin stacks exposures. And I've kind of allowed myself to have up to 2, not in every line, but I in my optimizer, I set a rule up to 2. I can have up to 2 bats against my pitcher tonight, just because a guy like Velazquez could leak a bomb. And really any pitcher today can leak a bomb to somebody else. So another way to get a high owned lineup to look a little bit different. As far as him being 60% owned, yeah, 7,500. He breaks 15 to 20 DKP, probably a solid play. To his credit, the strikeout numbers are there to kind of combat some of the advanced analytics not being in love with him. 28.6% K rate to lefties thus far, a 29% to righties. So I'll chip in and chair that just about any slate. And in a 4-game slate, we're going against a Marlins lineup that has 4 cats with a sub 20% K rate against righties. Everyone else is nearly 30% or greater. So it's a lot of half and half. If you get past the good half, you can enjoy strikeouts against the bad half. And I hate to ever have 60% of Velazquez, but today I don't really see myself not getting there on DraftKings, especially considering I got to select 2 pitchers.
Yeah, and I'm curious, Terry, just looking on that same vein with Velazquez, is he a guy, and I'm looking on FanDuel, 34% ownership for that one slot. Can you justify, maybe not on a bigger slate, but on the shorter slate, rolling with him as a P1 and only pitcher?
Yeah, so you can, for sure. He is the best strikeout option on the slate in probably the best strikeout spot overall. I wrote up the 3 obvious pitchers for the afternoon, and he was the first one that I got to based on that. He's the obvious guy on the slate, but he's a pitcher that I don't trust as far as I can throw the entire city of Philadelphia. I mean, he's a guy, he's striking out 28.9% of the hitters this year, but he's walking 14.8% in 29 and a third innings over 5 starts. The Gun mentioned the xFIP. I'll talk about the whip, 1.40 whip. This is not a pitcher that you want to get to, but on this slate, he is going to be the most likely to put up the best overall score. Does that mean he's going to run off and hide compared to some of these other options? Definitely not necessarily. So I think on FanDuel in particular, I think on DK, he's kind of a must. You need to at least get to a good amount of them because you're rostering 2 pitchers over there, and we've only really got 3 good options. So I think over there, you got to get to him. I think on FanDuel, where according to our top pitchers tool, he's coming up almost double the ownership of what his probability of being the top option is. That's a spot where I can start looking around. Now, I don't love the other options, but this is a slate that is literally just a list of pitchers that I don't like. So you're going to have to hold your nose and roster somebody. So I'd almost rather play the leverage game with some of these guys. I'm not saying I'm going to come in at no Velazquez when he's at 34% owned, but if I was at 20, I'd be pretty comfortable with that. 25, I'd be a little probably too heavy, but I'd still be comfortable. And then maybe get to the other side of this one with Sandy Alcantara, where people are trailing it a little bit. I don't like Steven Matz against the Red Sox in that park, and we'll get to that one in a few, but he's going under-owned as well. And then the entire bottom third of the list is completely under-owned. So,
how much are we factoring in cost on such a short slate? Just to follow up, Terry, because I wonder if Velazquez is at 8,500, if there is a significant more tag associated to him, is that maybe a deterrent for ownership to where maybe we don't see him as highly owned and it becomes more of maybe it's Drew Smyly at that cost effective price as opposed to where you see Velazquez right there at the top, clearly at 7,500 on DraftKings?
Yeah, I haven't honestly clicked the crunch button. I've been hoping that some of these lineups drop in here before I actually crunch things so I don't have to redo them. So I'm curious to see that myself, just how they come together. But I think particularly on FanDuel, where prices have just been very low all year long, and you can get to whatever you want to put together for the most part, especially when we don't have these 10 to 12,000 pitchers. I don't know that we need to sweat the price that much. If there are stacks that you want to get to and you cannot because you're trying to roster one of these guys, well, switch to one of the other guys. They are essentially coming up the same. There's not a major advantage to one of these guys over the other one. Velazquez happens to be, like I said, the best strikeout option going up against the best strikeout spot. That doesn't make him safe. That doesn't mean he's a lock to put up the best upside. So if you need to save $600 and go to Drew Smyly on FanDuel, go for it. The other way on, looks like Velazquez is the value option on DK. So.
Well, all right, but Gundacker, let's look at that right from maybe somebody on the opposite end of it as far as paying up, not to knowing that it's a short slate, knowing that you're going to have to pay anyway, especially if you're in DraftKings where you have the 2 pitcher slots. So somebody like Nick Pivetta, how does he jump out at you with the value, the potential to land in that top 2 stack percentage, but also knowing that, look, in a shorter slate, why not pay 9,600 if it's worth the risk?
So Pivetta is a great example of being a little bit results orientated. His Sierra xFIP worse than Velazquez, but his ERA sitting at just 3.16. A little bit on the lucky side. And he's going against a much more talented offense, the Blue Jays versus the Marlins. And he's going in the top hitters park on the slate, Dunedin, which is we've talked about. Literally, high school teams play there. It's yeah. So I don't have no reason to get there. And for the cost being over $2K more essentially versus Velazquez, I don't think that's a good pivot.
Fair enough. Is there anybody else when we start to look at the slate, and it might be another pivot right from that high price? If we're locking Velazquez in as one of the pitchers, where does the next value, you mentioned Smyly, Terry, where is that next value jump out? Even at the bottom end, that bottom 3, not really high owned at all.
Yeah, and that bottom 3 is ugly, difficult to trust. I think, we're getting David Price probably for 2 innings, maybe 3. I don't think we're getting a full start out of David Price by any means today. His first start of the year, he's pitched like 8 times out of the pen. the stories of his demise over the last few years are a little bit over exaggerated at this point, but I just don't think we're getting any actual length where we can consider him an option at 7,000 on DK, 7,200 on FanDuel. So I would cross him off. I would not be looking to roster Will Crow in this spot against the powerful Braves offense either. So really we're talking about Merrill Kelly. He's going up against the Dodgers, who, yeah, it's a diminished Dodgers lineup, but he's not been great, and the Dodgers are still fairly good. Don't get a great projection on him. We're talking about a bunch of guys that are projecting in the 20s in FanDuel points for me on the day. Smiley is my top projected starter. I've got him a couple of points ahead of Vince Velazquez. I like the matchup against Pittsburgh here. I just hate the ownership on Smiley, and he has not been good this year. So the Pirates are decent at avoiding strikeouts. They're in the middle of the league, 15th ranked, 23.5% strikeout rate against lefties this year. They've been completely lacking power in the split. Only 6 home runs so far this year, a 125 ISO as a team, creating runs 23% worse than average. It's just Smiley's at a 5.27 xFIP, a 135 whip, only a 19.3% strikeout rate. He was really good last year in 26 1/3 innings with a 37.8% strikeout rate, but he's been a 23.8% league average type of a pitcher his entire career. So I'm getting the best projection on him, but again, it's another guy I don't fully trust. I like the idea of at least grabbing some hedge stacks if you're going to roster him in, anywhere near where the field is. I'd like to be over the field on him, but if they're at 35%, I will not be over the field on him.
You mentioned Alcantara, Gundacker. Is that your other guy that you'd roll with if you're going to lock Velazquez in on a couple of your lineups here?
I'll definitely have exposure to him. If you just went off of Scherer, xFIP, and whip, Alcantara is probably the best pitcher on the slate. And he's not really going to garner a lot of attention. One, he's over 9K, and two, people have respect for the Phillies offense. And I do too. But sometimes you just want to bet on talent. If you're going to get the most talented advanced metric pitcher at a premium or a discounted ownership, sure, why not? His strikeout potential is okay, a 14.4% swing and strike rate this year, with almost a 30% K rate to righties. Against lefties, it's dropped to 20%. So this is a pretty lefty intense Phillies lineup. Odubel Herrera, Bryce Harper, Brad Miller, Andrew Knapp, and Nick Maton. All those guys can be bad and lefty. So it's not, it's not a comfortable click if you're trying to squeeze the ceiling out of 9.3, especially if you don't really rely on the win. But from a talent standpoint, there's every reason in the world to say that Alcantara is the best pitcher on the slate from a real life standpoint. So I will have Alcantara. I have him. So I have 4 pitchers that I have access to right now: Alcantara, Velazquez, and Smiley. And then I have a thought of having up to 10% Pivetta, but I haven't clicked the opto button yet because for some reason we're still missing a lineup. Oh, okay, we're only needing one now. But yeah, those are my main 3. So Alcantara is really up there as one of my pitchers that I'm going to lean on, and hopefully I get a decent ownership number on him.
Yeah, and just to fade my squad here with Alcantara on the hill there on Gundacker's point, Terry, it's not JT Realmuto. It's not this top heavy lineup. You can get through Herrera despite him maybe having the advantage with the left-handed bat, and then when you get through Hoskins, that's doable. Like 5 through 8 is beatable in the sense of it shouldn't blow you away. And I wouldn't be shocked looking at this lineup tonight if the Phillies muster 2 or 3 runs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Gun read off, there are a number of lefties in this lineup. I'll counter with that wasn't the best list of lefties I've ever heard, right? This is, outside of Bryce Harper, sure, that is one of the best lefties in the league when he's on. But Odubel Herrera, I'm not really worried about. I do like Brad Miller as a hitter. I think he's underrated. Andrew Knapp, I'm not worried about. Nick Maton, I'm not worried about. So I do think Alcantara is the best starter in terms of his talent overall. He's made a couple changes as well this year that I kind of like when I was poking around at it. Gun mentioned the swinging strike rate. It's up to 14.4 this year. That was his standard for his career has been right around 10.5.